My old, very close friend, Mr. S. Gurumurthy, and readers of Tughlaq. Let me at the very outset thank the entire editorial team of Tughlaq for having extended this invitation to me to speak on this most auspicious day of the year to the readers of Tughlaq. Normally, since we live in a very vibrant democracy dominated by media, I've always believed that journalists have very little accountability. But this is a rare occasion. I have seen that those who bring out magazines, edit magazines, are directly accountable to their readers who have a right to question them. And I found that most of the questions, though I must confess and apologize for not being able to speak in your very rich Tamil language, I thought I would not understand anything of the interaction. But with a little background of Sanskrit, it's not very difficult to at least get a gist of what some of the readers were asking. And I found that none of the questions were related to the magazine itself. These were questions of general concern of what is happening in the society, and also a lot of anxiety as to which way are we going. I've had the privilege of having met the late Sri Cho Ramaswamy on several occasions. In fact, I first saw him when in the 1970s he had come to Delhi to address a political kind of a function. And of course, one has followed the various instruments of communication that he used through his magazine. And he could not have found a better successor, though very different from him, in Mr. Gurumurthy, to be the trustee and the custodian of Tughlaq, which is a public property. I think the one issue that stands out about Mr. Gurumurthy always has been that his commitment to his conviction. There are very few people who can take a position, and even if they are alone, isolated in taking that position, they will stick to that position, continue to argue on that position till they have brought the majority down to their own views. And that's a rare quality that Guru possesses. Everybody knows him not only through his work as a professional, but also the write-ups that he's been writing on public issues for the last 35 years or more, where he's had the courage of conviction to take on the mightiest in the society and argue his crusades against them. I had when I came to this auditorium, I had thought of what to speak on. But after getting a feel of the opinions that your readers were asking, I shifted my priority. And I think one of the principal issues we are all concerned with in this auditorium is, where is India heading to? And of course, a second question on which I am not very competent to answer, many in this audience would know better than me, where is Tamil Nadu heading to? I will therefore confine myself to the first question. If we look at India and look at the period when Mr. Narendra Modi came to power in May 2014 and look at the period before that, a feeling of helplessness and disgust was stepping into the system. We were passing through a phase, and this is not a phrase that any one of us or local journalists invented. We were all passing through a phase where internationally the rating agencies said that India is passing through a policy paralysis. Our security situation was fragile. If you looked at Kashmir, thousands of stone throwers and separatists would come on the road. The security forces would be on the back foot. If you went to central India, the ultra left would have an upper hand. And if you looked at the political decision-making process, political leadership was a strange experiment. One family wanted to control the government, and you had a prime minister who had no authority to take decisions. In terms of the economy, the world was writing us off. One of the globally best known magazines, The Economist, carried an article saying, is the eye in the BRICS group of nations being knocked off? Is India stepping out of that? And India was being considered a part of what was called, again a phrase that the World Bank used, the fragile five in terms of the economy. So the eye was under threat, the fragile five was where we were being positioned. The security situation was challenging. There was despondency. And then after the change of government, you've had a series of changes. I need not repeat everything. And one of the factors, the capacity of Narendra Modi as a leader to take decisions, the capacity to take difficult decisions. And I can tell you, surgical strikes on Pakistan was not an easy decision to take. You ask your security forces on multiple points to enter, destroy the camps and come back. This is what India used to feel.
No.
Demonetization was not an easy decision to take. Friends like Gurumurthy had been advocating it for a long time.
Suresh.
A war on black money These are all difficult decisions to take. And suddenly, you are now faced with a situation where nobody really has the courage to stand up and say, this is a charge I have against the Prime Minister or a minister in the government. People have started saying political corruption has been wiped off from New Delhi. Now we need to make sure that it happens in the states also. That's the discussion which is on. And what was being considered as a part of the fragile five today, if you look at ease of business, doing business rankings, you move up 40 positions in 3 years. If you have were a part of the fragile five, the same people now say, those who called you policy paralysis, after 3.5 years have to upgrade you to recognize your economic strength. Dhoklam has demonstrated that India is also a tough nut to crack. The year 2017 witnessed a situation where for the first time after a number of years, the terrorists were on the run. Hardly a day passed by when there were incidents and the security forces had one success after another. Now this is really where the scenario has changed. You have somebody who is growth oriented, who has the courage of leadership to take decisions, who has had a track record of a personal crusade against corruption, who's strong on national security. So whether it is the left-wing extremist areas in central India or it is Kashmir, we can feel the change taking place. How do you fight this man? And that is where I was provoked by the suggestions and the questions being made by the readers to really make this point. Conventionally, for over most of the last 7 decades, the Congress party occupied the center stage as far as India was concerned. The party started shrinking. And one of the reasons for the shrinkage of the party was that instead of being a structured political party, over generations it became a crowd around a family. And the problem with dynastic political parties is, or parties which become a crowd around an individual or a family is, that their existence depends on the strength or popularity either of that individual or of the family. So if you had a tall leader like immediately after independence Pandit Nehru, then of course the party also will benefit. But if the current generation of the family has limitations, those limitations will then sink into the party also. and you've seen the shrinkage of the party. The other problem that dynastic parties have is that those who are acceptable to the family are the only ones who can become a leader. And therefore, the natural leadership creation doesn't take place. Such parties cannot create an Atal Bihari Vajpayee or a Narendra Modi who will come from a humble background and on the strength of their potential eventually become strong and powerful leaders. That doesn't happen in dynastic parties. And therefore the Congress not only shrunk as a center stage party, it ceased to even take the centrist positions that it used to on most occasions. Today the alternative agenda to Narendra Modi and the BJP does not come from the Congress party's ideological position. Where is this opposition coming from? Who lays down the agenda? And I have no hesitation in saying that there is a group of subversive forces in this country which is trying to clearly lay down that agenda. Now, we did not realize it initially. We thought that these are stray incidents which may take place in Bastar in Chhattisgarh or in Kashmir, or when the person who blasted Mumbai in 1993 is being executed. Several forces came around him to save that person. The first sign was visible when you heard those slogans in the Jawaharlal Nehru University that this country should be broken into pieces. And when they said this country should be broken into pieces, I ask all of you a question, to ask yourself a question and answer it. All of us differed and disagreed with Indira Gandhi as a leader. At least I did. But one thing I will concede to her: if a slogan is being raised that India should be broken into pieces, would the Congress party that she headed ever identified herself with that slogan? It didn't happen in Punjab or Kashmir or at the time of the creation of Bangladesh. It did not. But the current leadership of the Congress party had no hesitation in going to the university and expressing solidarity with those slogans. And it didn't stop there. Somebody calls the Army Chief General Dyer. Now it's unthinkable. Here are your security forces fighting the enemy, fighting the subversives in Kashmir, the separatists. And you have somebody using this phrase, and all these alliances. Now this is an alliance of the ultra left and the jihadis. Let us have no hesitation of this. When this kind of an alliance is formed, who are the ones who in the last few days are fomenting caste trouble now? It is the same set of people who represent these ideas of subversion. At times they will masquerade in the name of caste. At times they will masquerade in the name of free speech. And the regrettable aspect is that a party which for almost 7 decades occupied the center stage of Indian politics slowly decides to forego its own ideological personality and become a cheerleader with this alliance of subversion. And therefore, when you asked a question to Mr. Gurumurthy as to what is the election in 2019 going to be, I have no doubt that the ideological battle is going to be between the BJP or the NDA led by Narendra Modi and these kind of forces of subversion. They will be laying down the ideological agenda, and some of our political parties, wittingly or unwittingly, I hope it is unwitting, gather around them. And therefore, anybody with a sense of commitment to this country, who's committed about the progress of this country, the sovereignty of this country, has to stand up and speak in one voice for the nation itself. And I think India today is on the cusp of history. When did we hear in the past that the Prime Minister of India travels internationally and suddenly you find thousands and thousands of Indians gathering around him? This is the newfound confidence of an Indian. We could not even dream of the fact that year after year, for the last 3 years, we became the fastest growing major economy in the world. This year, after the series of structural changes, we slowed down a little, and by 0.1%, we became the second fastest. So our yardstick has completely changed. And of course, the second half of this year, the result seems to be, the indication seems to be positive, and we are well, again, on way to becoming the fastest. That's the potential India has. We have we've demonstrated our capacity at structural changes and reforms. We've demonstrated our great capacity at even strengthening our federal institutions. We have our challenges. Our agrarian situation is a big challenge. But if we continue to grow at 8+%, the benefits of these increased revenues, if for the next 10 to 15 years, we plow back into physical infrastructure, into social infrastructure, and into agrarian India, I have not the least doubt that with the kind of investments we are planning, these are all challenges India is capable of overcoming. And of course, our last speaker, the Chancellor, made a very powerful point as to how long can we continue month after month to live in an era of elections. We had originally envisaged India where we'd have elections once in 5 years. At least for 4.5 years there would be peaceful governance. Every comment would not be politically oriented, every step would not be politically oriented. We had thought that. Unfortunately, after 1967, the electoral clock went the other way. And when the electoral clock went the other way, we found that elections either in the state or the centre or the by-elections are continuously being held. And therefore, a lot of comments, a lot of political contact has become election-oriented. The Prime Minister has been asking for a debate on this subject. And I do hope that the political system of our country is able to arrive at a consensus where we come close to having a consensus on election once every 5 years and peaceful governance for 4 years. And I said I had planned to speak about many other issues, but your questions provoked me to really change the substance of what I had to say. Since Mr. Gurumurthy is here, and he had been one of the strongest persons in convincing us on demonetization, I have only 2 things to tell my friend. It was a very difficult decision for the Prime Minister to take, and only this Prime Minister had the courage to take that decision. I will be giving the figures out in the budget. The tax base is expanding. The collections are expanding. The digitization of the economy is expanding. And the amount of currency itself in form of paper is squeezing. These are the advantages clearly visible. No serious effort had been made to take anti-black money steps. So from day one, the setting up of the SIT, the black money law for assets abroad, a last opportunity to bring it back, the effective enforcement of the Benami law, demonetization, GST, a series of steps has today sent a clear message to those who evaded that it is no longer safe to lead that course of trade. We must remember that the honest taxpayer in this country not only pays his own tax, but he also pays the share of the evader. Because the country needs a whole basket of taxes. You must collect. So the evader's share is also paid by the honest man. And once the base expands, the ability to rationalize the rates itself improves. We were able to rationalize the GST rates within the first 2-3 months as compliances improve and pick up. And I am quite sure that a series of these steps that we have taken will enable us to continue to do so. We've taken a series of structural reforms. A lot of questions were being asked on the NPAs to Gurumurthy. A simple question is, lakhs and crores of rupees are given without adequate security. And today, we inherit a legacy that you have a large number of companies which are unable to pay those monies back. We tried every step within the banking system and finally had no option but to make all those people stand in the queue of insolvents. And they are threatened now with the loss of those assets itself. Now that's an extraordinary situation which has arisen. But that's a bitter pill we'll have to go through. Banks may have to take haircuts. My friends in the Congress party, including the former finance minister, asked me, are these haircuts a bit too large? I said, that's a question your party should be answering, because when these loans were given, what were the securities taken? And really this is a question which should have been kept in mind at that stage. We are only trying to solve a problem which we inherited. And there is a moral hazard in this problem. This 2,12,000 crores which is being put into the banking system is your money, it's taxpayers' money. And eventually what the solution which we are doing is that your money which could have been spent on the rural areas to fight agrarian distress, We are now trying to strengthen the banking system on the strength of that money. Because those loans were given by my predecessors to governments and banks to those sections of the industry which have now refused to return. So there is a moral hazard, but there is no other solution. And I am quite certain that even though it's a difficult challenge, there are two works in progress: rehabilitation of the strength of the banking system and a priority to the agrarian sector. And I think having taken a series of earlier difficult decisions, these are not very difficult challenges as far as the leadership of the Prime Minister is concerned for him to take. And with the support of the country and the goodwill of its people, I am quite certain we will succeed in implementing them. And India, hopefully, today the 7th largest economy in the world, about to become the 5th largest, will continue to grow from strength to strength. And I am sure the best in the life of an Indian still awaits a future date as far as we